stage. We're going to use this as a stage. Court liaison from the Juvenile and Domestic Courthouse, Paula King, who's here with us today. She's going to be sharing her presentation on juvenile detention and substance abuse. Thank you.
Thank you all for having me here today. I applaud you for including the youth in this conversation and for having the conversation, because mental health, as you introduced me, I am an intake officer with the Fairfax County Juvenile Court. I also am a facilitator for the parent support group for Fairfax County. I've worked for the court for 21 years, and throughout my career, I've worked with gangs. I've worked with gangs for the last 14 years, which, as you read the newspaper, you see more of that. Mental health is tied into our gang-involved youth. It's tied into our youth who come through our system for shoplifting all the way up to murder. We see mental health across the spectrum for the kids that we work with. One of the things that I do in my role as a parent support group facilitator is I work with the parents. I help the parents have more tools on how to deal with and identify not only the child's mental health issues, but maybe substance abuse issues, aggression issues, anxiety, all of those things, in hopes to have the child not enter the court system at all, and that we can have them receive some community resources, therapies, and things of that nature in the community without ever having to be involved in our system. In 1996, when I started with the court system, we had 55 beds in our juvenile detention center, and we quickly expanded to 121 beds a year or two later. When we had 55 beds, we always had over 100 kids in the detention center. So now we sit at 121 beds in Fairfax County, and one thing that we've done over the last 20 years is we've really made a concerted effort to try to keep kids out of our system. And how we've done that is by changing the front door, the intake services, and really trying to match kids with resources in the community. To that point, anyone want to take a guess of how many kids that we have at our detention center right now?
1,500.
1,500? Anybody else have a guess?
400.
738.
Kids on average. We have 29 kids in our detention center. And so we have really swung that pendulum by working with kids and families in their community without having to hold them in our detention center. We do assessments now on the front end. We take a look at their mental health, substance abuse, aggression, any other risk factors that we think might lend themselves to reoffend in this community. We also look at what are the needs, and so we do all of those assessments when every youth comes in our door. I'm the parent of 2 teenagers, so for those of you who have teenagers, I understand as a parent, and so I speak to you not only as an intake officer today, but also as a parent on this journey, which is different than when we all grew up. The pressures that the kids face, very different than the pressures that I faced and you probably faced growing up. Social media has really changed the game for our youth. It's very, very different. The pressures that they feel with social media, very different than when I was growing up. When I was growing up, I could come home, and whatever happened at school could be left at school. Now, they come home, they have their phone, it's constantly at them. Whatever happened there is still going on. That chatter never stops for the youth. I'm going to talk a little bit about how to try to reduce some of the chatter, some of the strategies to try to reduce the chatter for the kids when it comes to social media. I'd like to just start with the foundation of love and affection. Whenever I work with parents, I encourage them to love the child, hate the behavior, but love the child. So if your child is using substances or your child is acting aggressively towards you, you can hate that behavior, but you still have to love that child. There's 3 very basic ways to love that child. Anyone want to give me one way?
Communication.
Communication, so verbal.
Yeah.
So tell them. Tell them that you love them. Let them hear that. Even when they might be driving you nuts. Let them know that you love them. Even when they're doing something wrong. I love you. I don't agree with this behavior, but I love you. Let them know that. Any other ways that you can show a child how you love them?
Be there for them.
Be there physically. Give them that hug. Bring them in. Hug them. Let them know physically that you love them. The last one's a little tricky. Anyone want? So we have physical, we have verbal. what do you think the last one might be?
Make
Maybe.
them feel like they are not just experiencing something out of the blue. It's natural. Try to understand them, let them explain.
Okay.
Let it play out.
And so supporting them in one of the ways, if the verbal hasn't worked and the written, I just gave away, the verbal and the physical haven't worked, written, write to them. Write them a letter. Write them a text. I love you. A lot of times the written one we forget about, but it's very powerful. So that's the foundation for everything that we're going to talk about today, is love and affection, written, verbal, and physical. Prabha asked me to talk a little bit about what's going on around our area. There's a lot going on around our area here in Fairfax. We see, you can turn on the news any day, and you can see some of the issues that the youth in Fairfax County, as well as across the nation, are facing. We have an opioid crisis across the nation, as well as here in Fairfax County. What we're seeing at intake is we're seeing kids using pills. We're seeing a lot of Xanax. They're in your medicine cabinets. So I would highly recommend any time that you have been prescribed a medicine and you have finished that, you have to get rid of it. Kids are using not only what's in your medicine cabinet, but what's in grandma and grandpa's medicine cabinet. Because a lot of times the older generations, they have a surgery and then they forget that they have the medicine in the cabinet, and the kids are using those meds. Ways to dispose them. Fairfax County just started, West Springfield substation has a box. You can walk into the substation any time of day and drop your medicine in the box. We also, some places in the county at the public health department, they have bags. In those bags is a substance that you just throw the pills in, you put some water in it, it neutralizes it, and then you can just throw the bag away. There's 2 drug take-backs a year in Fairfax, but every single day, Fairfax has made a concerted effort that if you want to get rid of your medicine, that you can, and that's to help with the opioid crisis. The other things that kids are using in your medicine cabinets, cough syrup. They're using cough syrup. They're using Chlorocidin, something that they can, that's over the counter. So just be aware of what's in your medicine cabinet. Be aware of how your child acts. Can I have one of you come up? I want to just show something. I always tell parents, do you mind if I hug you? Okay, so a hug test, okay? If my daughter comes home, I'm hugging her, I'm sniffing her, I might even hold her like this, I'm checking her pulse, and I'm looking in her eyes, all in about 20 seconds. That hug test can gather so much information in such a little time, and be up when they come home. I was so tired last night. My 17-year-old senior, she was out with her friends, but I had to stay up. One, of course, to make sure she got home okay, but I want to make sure, I want to engage her, make sure that she's okay. Give her that hug, get her close to me. I can smell if there's marijuana or alcohol or anything else on her. I'm going to bring her close to me. And that's a really quick, easy test. Wasn't too bad, right? I mean, and again, not only did I get all the information that I need, but I also gave them that physical, that love in that moment. Yes, of course. Come on in. We're also seeing the drugs are coming through the mail. Some of the drugs are coming through the mail. The kids are getting them off the dark net, so they're having them mailed to them through the Postal Service. So one thing that you can do is United States Postal Service has what's called informed delivery. So you can set up your address to get a scanned copy every day of your mail. So that way you know if something, I'm just going to show you mine, so that way if something looks odd to you that's coming through your mail, you'll at least know that, wait a second, where is this coming from, why is this here, and be able to either question your child, or if that mail is not there when you get home. So my mail gets scanned every day to me, I know what's coming through. So I know what to expect, I know when something doesn't look quite right that's going to come through the mail for me. Because a lot of these kids are getting their drugs through the mail now. Marijuana is a challenge. It's a challenge because I hear so many parents talk about, well, my kid is telling me that it's good and it's being legalized everywhere. It has not been legalized anywhere for anyone under the age of 21. So it is still, even places that have legalized it, they have not brought it to age 21. Anytime a youth comes in and wants to argue the merits of marijuana with me, I tell them that they have great points and that they should send it to their legislators. End of the conversation, but for today, it's against the law in Virginia for youth. So that's an easy way to kind of turn that conversation off and let them know that you don't agree with the use of marijuana. It's very easy to just say, in our home, we don't break the law. That's a very simple principle that you can have the guiding light for your family. Is in our home, we don't break the law. And in Virginia, it's against the law to smoke marijuana. It is hard with the chatter. I would tell you to continue to be that voice. Continue to be that voice. Talk to them. For single parents, make sure that you're always having the conversation. For two-parent households, make sure you're on the same page. It's very easy not to be. It's very easy maybe not to agree with your spouse. Do that privately. Let your children know that in public you support each other and that you're on the same page. It's the best gift that you'll give your child. Because as soon as they know that there's a little rift between the two of you, they're in there. They are in there, and they are going to work that to their advantage. So make sure that together you provide that united front. And that's security for your child as well. But too often times I see that there's a rift between the parents and the kid is just really struggling in there. So be on the same page, be unified. Educate them. Text them articles. Sit down. Watch TV programs. I leave Washington Post articles out for my kids all the time, whether it's a value conversation I want to have with them or maybe something about the latest drug. Anyone see the piece that I think it was Channel 9 did on juuling this week? Did anyone see that on juuling? All right, juuling. Does anyone know what juuling is?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would know, yeah.
I make sure all the kids know what juuling is. So juuling, it looks like a USB. And it's a way that they use to vape, and the piece that they do a Google search on juuling, Fairfax County, Juuling, and you will find that the piece was done at McLean High School, right there in your community. Watch that piece because it shows you what the juuling looks like. It talks about how the little informal study that the young people did at McLean High School said 2/3 of the kids at McLean High School were juuling. They were juuling in class. It's a major problem. The vaping and all of those things are a major problem for our youth. But take some time to watch that. Watch it with your kids. Have the conversation. Ask them, have you ever seen anyone juuling? What would you do if you did? Those types of things. Have that constant conversation. Years ago, I worked on a drug panel for heroin overdoses, and I worked with a young gal who had been charged federally with heroin possession distribution, and I asked her, if she could give me one piece of advice, what would it be? And my daughter was in 2nd grade at the time. She's a senior now. And she said to me, listen, you need to talk to them about drugs because drugs are the most dangerous stranger they'll ever know. And parents always talk about stranger danger, but they never talk about drugs. I thought, wow, that was really powerful. So I went home that night to my 2nd grader, and I asked my daughter, what do you know about drugs? And she said, well, there are good drugs and bad drugs. I thought, okay. And she said, I was on steroids because I had pneumonia. She said, so that was good. But Manny Ramirez, he should never have been on steroids. Manny Ramirez is a baseball player who was on steroids. I thought to myself, here she was in 2nd grade, only 8 years old, that had processed all sorts of information about drugs that I didn't even realize that she had already processed. Thank goodness for that young gal who told me to go home and have a conversation. Ever since that day, I've committed to just talking to my kids always about drugs and just having conversations with them. So you check in with your kids. You'll be surprised about how much they know. Ask them about juuling. See what they can tell you about it. We talked a little bit about social media. You should know the passwords on your kids' phones. You should know the passwords if they have social media accounts, if they have Facebook, if they have Snapchat, if they have Kik, if they have Instagram. And if you don't know what these things are that I'm telling you, you need to learn. You need to find somebody in your community who can teach you about the ins and outs of all of these. We take so many charges where the exchanges happened over Snapchat, they happened over Instagram. I tell my kids there shouldn't be anyone following you on any of these websites, on Twitter or anything, unless you can identify them to me. You don't have 1,000 friends. I can assure you, you do not have 1,000 friends. We need to be able to identify them somehow, because God forbid something happens to you. I need to be able to know who is this person who is following you, and identify them in some way. One of the things that Prodigal wanted me to touch on was how to prevent peer pressure. Be involved. Know your kids' friends. Have that active supervision. Check in. I'm the mom who will come to your door. If my child's coming over to your house, I will come up to your door, introduce myself, and then if I think something's not quite right at this doorstep, relieve it. My child doesn't have to stay. You're the parent. You're the parent. It's uncomfortable sometimes. A lot of parents they're not used to you coming to the door. Go to the door. When I have kids come over to my house, I walk right outside. The parents aren't coming in. I walk out to the car. I'm Paul. Let's exchange contact information. Let's have a little conversation. Your child's coming into my care. Let me talk to you a little bit about what my expectations are going to be while your child is here in my care, and vice versa. If my child's going into your home, have that conversation. Create a village. You know who the parents are in your community, who you can trust, and who share the same value system. If they don't, they're not in the village, and that's okay. And I'm probably not going to be in their village either, because I might be too much for them. But know your village. Know who you can rely on in your community. As far as, no, that's okay. A couple of other things. Support groups in your community. I run the parent support group at the Fairfax County Courthouse. I have flyers here for all of you. If you don't need it right now, take one for somebody who might, and give them out to friends who might be struggling with different teenage behaviors that could lend themselves to being involved in our court system. NAMI, National Alliance for Mental Illness, has a very strong support network here in Northern Virginia. They have meetings, they have family support persons that are available to families. And then, of course, in the substance abuse community, you have AA, Al-Anon, Marijuana Anonymous, Families Anonymous, all of those folks who can be of support to you. I know that I only have a couple more minutes here, so I wanted to open up the floor and ask if there were any questions that you all might have. Do you have questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So, as a college student, I think, I'm very lucky where, I have a really good relationship with my parents. Not to toot my own horn, but I have really great supportive parents. But I know that for a while, going into college, there was that, teenage rebellion, or I was like, oh, why are you, in my life? And I think my biggest question is for you, I know you were saying how, for social media, that parents should have their passwords. And I'm totally for it. I think that's a great idea, especially when they're, minors. But my question is, especially when you go into college, how do you still have an eye on them, but, keep that, because you don't want to break their trust, I guess, in that kind of sense. So how do you, keep that distance, but still be hey, I need to know what's going on in your life?
Yeah, trust but verify. And so that's where I am right now as a parent, because I have a senior, and so it's gosh, she's going to be off in college, and in just a little bit, I really need to start to back off. And so I just spot check.
Yeah.
I just check every now and then, just see if everything's okay. But I feel like because I had such well-established patterns and with her, that now she does it on her own. For example, every night my rule was that the phone came into our room and got plugged in and got charged at 9 o'clock. Well, now, even though she's a senior in high school, she no longer has to bring it into my room. I notice every single night she plugs it out in the hallway herself. So I guess that I would say to you that my advice is start with the very first time that they get a phone, those expectations go in right then.
Yeah.
Because it's very hard to play catch up.
Right, yeah.
So if you establish those early, then I think that there's the responsibility. Of course, I wanted her to have Instagram and things of that nature because all of the kids are on it, so she needs to learn how to use it responsibly.
Of course.
but I also need to be there at the beginning to give those lessons. I don't advocate for any kids getting on any of the social media before age 13.
Yeah.
And if they do, they've lied about their age. So if you have any kids who are under age 13 and they are on Twitter or they are on Instagram, it means that they've lied about their age, because it's a requirement. There's a federal statute, COPPA, C-O-P-P-A, that says that it's 13. So if they've done that, then that means that they've just adjusted their age. And my kids really struggled with that, because all of their friends were on Instagram. They were all on there, and they said, we're the only ones. And I said, I'm not gonna allow you to lie about your age.
Yeah.
And so I think that those are the little things that you can do. Then once they get to college, I think that I'm praying that the conversation will still be there with my daughter and I. But I'm hoping that we establish, she knows now.
Yeah.
She knows how to handle that herself, on Twitter and all of those kind of things. The other 3-prong test that I have for my kids is, before you tweet, text, or post anything, it should pass this 3-prong test. Number 1, is it okay, I'm Greek, is it okay for Yaya to see? That's my mom. Is it okay for grandmom to see? Number 2, would you be okay with this being on the front page of the Washington Post? And number 3, would you attach this to your college application? And if the answer to any of those 3 is no, then I tell them to stop, don't post it, don't tweet it, don't text it, think about it. And that, I hope she carry, both of my children, I have a 13-year-old boy and a 17-year-old daughter, that they carry that with them for the rest of their lives. And that because your digital footprint is there forever. And colleges are looking at your digital footprint, employers are looking at your digital footprint, everybody's looking, it's there. And so if you're going to post it, make sure that you're okay with everyone seeing it.
That was great. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions that I can answer? Yes.
Because we're from Nepalese community, parents are working 24/7. I know I was growing up, my parents were working all the time. It's a thing, it's very easy to be absent from home, because you come home from school, not your parents aren't home, you go to bed and they come home, there's a whole gap. Do you guys offer some sort of programs for parents that help them understand how they can be there without, I don't know if this makes sense, but does that make sense? There's a lot of being absent, and I know you said you can write to them, you can tell them, but sometimes when you're not physically there, it's very hard to convey your message about I'm still checking up on you, or
a lot of the things that I've shared tonight, they take seconds. That hug test that you and I did, that takes seconds. Checking a child's phone when you know what you're looking for. I work 4 to midnight generally. When I come in at midnight, I'm exhausted. And that's only if I didn't have a late case. If I had a late case, then I'm there much later. It takes me about less than a minute to check both of my kids' phones. They're asleep, the phones are in the hallway, I just quickly, take a look through them real quick. I'm not in to read every single text or anything, but I want to make sure that everything's okay, that the tone seems okay, and then, so those things are very, very quick, and you can do those any time of day or night. They don't have to be, at 8 a.m. every day. And as far as being there for your kids, be present when you are there, and that's hard, because we're all attached to our phones, right? I mean, and I swear that's my New Year's resolution every year, be present, be present, be present. But it's so important, be present when you are there, because we all have to work. And so when you are there with them, be present and let them know it, let them feel it, that they're your presence.
Where do you draw the line between nagging and, going through their phones?
I think my kids would have a very different answer. Because I don't address it unless I think it's a big deal. Unless I think it's going to be something that could be problematic, and I leave a lot of open-ended questions for them. I don't say, I saw this on your phone, you shouldn't do that. I'll say to them, hey, I saw that Johnny sent you this text. How did you feel about that? Why do you think he sent that? What do you think that he was thinking? And so it's more of a conversation rather than me attacking them and telling them. I'm trying to just keep open lines of communication, get them to think, because I want them to think, I don't want someone to talk to me this way. And so if they can come up with that we have a much better shot of that not repeating. Yes, sir.
Good question. For people who are, let's say, not online savvy or online
Yeah.
savvy, do Fairfax County offer like services in terms of for parents, to just to keep them in the loop, or how to look at signs, could be anything.
They do a lot of the police substations, they'll do internet safety forums, and then the schools, a lot of the PTOs and PTAs, they'll do internet safety forums as well. And then there's a wealth of information on the internet that you can find, and you can look up YouTube videos on how to, find these things, all of that, it's available. And I'm there on Tuesday nights if you ever need my help. I can do Apple stuff. Android I'm not as good with, but Apple stuff I'm pretty savvy. I mean, there's a lot of restrictions that you can put on an Apple phone, so that way the content is limited.
Yeah, I was trying to answer the concept of village, creating a village youth house earlier, but in a different way. Like, it takes a village surrounding a village, and a lot of families work overtime, and the kids are almost like by needs. They are neglected in a way, but if you could create that sense of community and seek help, you could always come to the rescue of one another.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, within your own community, within your family, if your family's not here, building that family, you'll find, if you look, you'll find people who have a shared value system, who believe what you believe. I'm blessed to have neighbors who happen to all be in law enforcement, except for one house. We're all in law enforcement, and so we all have a vow to each other that we'll take care of each other's kids. That, in that I'm okay if one of my neighbors addresses my child, I'm okay with that. If it's for their safety and well-being, I'm okay with that. Let me know what the conversation was and I'll follow up.
When we're talking about the village, it's not necessary that you have to be in the same country, same country, because you have a one common goal. Yes.
Yes.
Can your neighbor, next neighbor, they can be from anywhere.
Be a teacher, coach.
Anywhere. So it's kind of things that be aware of it only in school.
Yes.
If you have a kid, you automatically connect to the family with the swimming pool, then swimming pool,
Yes.
then school, all those things. So different sense of creating a village.
Yes, no, I agree. It can come from anywhere. It can come from all of those places. Thank you all very much, and I'll leave my contact. Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I do have one question.
Yes.
Catherine, on the steps.
Okay. Yes, so the question is, how do we work with the schools? We do work with the schools. So we have, if youth gets into any type of trouble, then we have a probation officer who's assigned to the school. Each school also has a school probation officer who works as a liaison with us. We do these type of outreach programs to the schools, and as far as truancy goes, when children are skipping school, we have a whole team. We have a whole team of court workers who work in conjunction with the school to reduce that. We've also worked with the schools when there's a criminal misdemeanor. This is our juvenile justice system handbook, and then I'm also going to leave. The other thing I would recommend that you all do, and I just printed out a couple that I thought would be interesting to you, is the Fairfax County Youth Survey. They survey kids in 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th grades, and they compile all of the data. This one just happens to be about parental perception and alcohol use. Parents who think that alcohol is very wrong, 93% of the kids don't drink. The parents who think that it's not wrong, 54% of the kids do drink. You are very powerful as parents. Yeah. Your message is very powerful. But I'm going to leave these. There's also a whole wheel about resiliency that ties into mental health. I'll leave these for you. But this whole survey, the compilation is 61 pages of the results, but the full is 236 pages. But you can go on. You can search by gender, by age, by grade, by race, and it'll give you the results for each one of those subgroups. So the youth survey for Fairfax County, just Google that, and I can also send all the links to you from.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all
so
very
much.
much.
Thank you so much. Just to make sure everybody's
I'll test.
Physically,
Yeah, physically, yeah.
verbally,
And Richard.
You got it. You guys got it. Before I move on, can I please ask ANS President Ms. Prabha to come sit with us here? We can clap.
yeah, mom.
Yeah.
All right. Just to acknowledge all the volunteers we have today, youth volunteers. We have Trisha Dahal taking the beautiful pictures. Neha's here. Anushka, Prakriti, you guys can wave. And then we also have Sneha, Shreya in the back, Arya. I'll come back to the other ones later. Let's just move on. I would like to welcome on our stage here Dr. Shyam Karki. He's a specialist in psychiatry and geriatric pharmacy. He has experience of working more than 40 years in medical health and has published and presented more than 100 scientific papers on related topics. He has also held positions as an associate professor in schools of pharmacy at SUNY Buffalo, Howard University, and University of Maryland. He has also been the director of pharmacy at many hospitals. Let's welcome him.
Good afternoon, thank you for the slide.
Yeah.
Slide. In the meantime, Nepali बोलूं कि English में बोलूं?
Either way, whatever you feel comfortable.
Right, the bad, like in English.
There's kids who are also here, they might not understand fully Nepali. You have to have that.
के जहाँ भी पनि अक्सर उतै अरू कम्युनिटीमा चाहिँ अरूमा बोल्नुपर्छ इङ्ग्लिसमा बोल्नुपर्छ यहाँ मात्रै हो नेपाली बोल्नु पाउँदैन Main thing while we are trying to get some slides, the main problems confronting the youth are two. One is drug addiction. It's a very, very big one. Right now, it's the most important one. In Maryland, what they have done is they have recognized that problem so much that it's mandated that every school has a program on drug addiction. They must go through that one. And this was just approved by one of the delegates who put. I wish you had a delegate or someone here from a district here also, because they've got to know also what's your problem. Because we have our own problems in Nepali, but they've got to know also, because that way they will find out what's happening. You know, I serve as the commissioner in Maryland also. So from that perspective, getting your delegate is very important, because they take your information back to the government and government acts on that one. That we get grants, we get a lot of other help for using, and it's very important. The next thing I heard, I find that every year, 5 to 10 people commit suicide in Nepali population. And I know a lot of families where it occurs. For me, it's such a painful thing. The reason is suicide is unavoidable. It shouldn't have been happening. If we are looking, just like the lady said, if we are observing your children, if we are keeping in touch, we should be able to catch it. Suicide is such a waste of life. And for young people, it's such a waste of life. I have seen so many people, so many families grieve the whole life, saying, how come? After the suicide, they come and talk to me, then they say something happened, then I ask questions, then I know it's a suicide. And then I tell them, did this happen, did this happen? Then I don't tell them, but everyone would say, only if I had done this one, only if I had done just this one. This happens. So what I will do today is, because my time is very 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, usually I spend 1 hour introductory lecture, then 2 hours, 3 lectures on suicide. That's the problem I do. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to condense everything very fast. And if you like it, you can call me back, then I'll spend a lot of hours. This time it just sensitize you to you saying suicide is something very important, and this is something you can really prevent it. There are not many things you can prevent, but suicide is one you can prevent very easily. Only you've got to observe, you've got to know what's happening. Just like if somebody gets sick, you take temperature 1 or 2, you say, oh, let's take a doctor. But suicide, unless you know what to look for, you don't know. And then when you find out, it's too late. So it's good to know what to look for. The one before this one?
The one before this one.
You see, the suicide is in this country is a very, very high number. Like 2010, almost 38,000. 14, we have data only up to 14. 42,000. That means almost 40,000 people are dying every year of suicide. It's a big number. And the second thing is in suicide, people don't like to somehow there's stigma. Nobody wants to say my so and so died of suicide. They won't tell you. So behind every suicide death, there are almost 5 deaths not reported. When you start looking at like that one, it's a big number. And the problem is, how many patients die of HIV? Less than this one. But the government spends 100, 200 millions on that one. But suicide prevention, how much money this have? Not much. This is what I mean by you've got to have a delegate so that he's the one who authorizes budget, who is the one who wants. Like back in Maryland, I had a delegate with me and I talked to him saying, just like drug addiction, you should make this program suicide prevention also. Mandatory for every school and for every parent. So that way they know what's happening. So this is why we need to voice, not only we need to be aware, we need to make that awareness. Go to our politicians so that we can act on it, and you have to feel like, I pay my taxes, I pay him, and he's the one who should do it. So next one. So that comes out to 100, almost like 120 suicide per day. Almost like one suicide every 12 minutes, that means you are at 3 hours. If you are at 3 hours, 20 people have already committed suicide and died. So if you start looking at that sense, it's a big problem. So it doesn't look like that when you look at the number in that traffic accident. And we talk about war, Vietnam War, Iraq War, every war. In 1 year, more people die of suicide than in 1 year war. And imagine how much money we spend helping them, but suicide is not much money, and there's not much awareness also, not much noise going around. It's because it's a very silent death. Let's go to the next one. So age group wise, once in 15, it comes out to 10, as you age, rate of suicide goes. So as you get older, sometimes you start thinking people get wiser, they shouldn't be committing suicide. It's not like that one. Somehow, the ability to handle, ability to accommodate problems is a cause of suicide, and with age, suicide goes up and up and up. Next one. And the youth one, even in this age group, 5 to 14, suicide is the 5th leading cause of death. And these are very young people. You start wondering what should be bothering them, but it's the 5th one leading cause. And then when you're very young, this is the one that bothers me because this is the most productive age. Young people, vital, vibrant, and for them, it's the 3rd leading cause of death. And if you go to who causes death, suicide, some reason, more of the males, they commit suicide. And usually, more than half the time, suicide is caused by firearms. That's why, whether you are a gun advocate or not, keeping gun at home is risk number 1. Because more than half of the suicides are caused by using guns. And then the highest rate in this country is in Alaska. We'll go to that one again. Next one. Next slide. Next slide. Just like I said, it's the 10th leading cause of death. After cardio, after cancer, all those, it's the number 10. And we talk of so many violence, so many people killing. More people die by suicide than someone killing. So when you start looking at that one, how many news you hear, so many people killing by all those things, but more people kill themselves than someone killing them. When you start thinking in that term, then you can see the gravity and the magnitude of the problem. And in 2014, almost 150,000 people were hospitalized from suicide. And every hospitalization, how much money you are paying, it comes everything to how much your insurance premium, because money was there also. So look from every angle, you are paying for this. And like I already said, that firearm, gun. And some reason, women try to commit more suicide, but men die more often. It's a paradox, right? Women try suicide more often than men, but men die more often. The reason is the paradox. Usually, men try to shoot them. Women don't try to shoot them. They cut the wrist, but they die. And for every completed suicide, there are at least 25 attempts that they tried, but they failed. So from that perspective, if we are careful, for someone dying, you have 25 chances to save them, right? Because for every one successful suicide, they have to try 25 times. Every failed attempt, if we are careful, that's an opportunity also. Next. And suicide rate by ethnicity is the lowest one in Asia. Why do you think so? Reporting. Huh?
Reporting too, right?
Yeah, family support. That's very interesting. Family support. But in that one, they have done studies. It's very interesting that when someone comes first immigration, suicide is high. But once you go to fourth, fifth generation, again it comes just like American. It's adaptation, there's no difference. So the first generation is very top. The reason is it's a conflict of culture. For younger children, for the parents, what happened there is still their own mentality, their gurus, Bhoti, everything, they have their own culture, sub-culture, trying one. In that sense, the narrowing of the ethnic group. Whereas for the students, they go to schools, it's a broadening one, not only Nepalese, there are Indians, there are Americans, so their culture is different. So for the young people, it's a big struggle. That's why the lady said, you got to start constantly communicate. Because there are two worlds. For the parent, it's a very narrow world. For the children, it's a very broad world, and sometimes they don't know which way to go, and it's a constant process. Let's go to the next one. Now what I'm going to do, because I want to make it a very short one, me and Dr. Upreti, I think, we did it in 1997 in Chicago. We took an hour only talking. This one here, we have so much minute, and I have to rush. Like I said, if you are interested, I can always come back and spend hours and hours talking about this. So, on suicide, there are a lot of things misunderstanding. One, we think that nobody can stop suicide. People think, he's going to kill himself, nobody can stop it, so why bother? It's not true. Because if people are in crisis, they try to commit suicide, they're in crisis. If you provide them help, then stop it. So it's always good. That's why you got to pay attention. Your children know what's going through and talk to them and help them solve their crisis. And then another thing is we say that if someone may commit suicide, you go and ask him, are you trying to commit suicide? All these things, it will make him angry and he'll go and kill himself. And that's not true also. Because you've got to talk to people, saying, what's bothering them, what it is, what are the issues, what can we do to solve. You go and talk to them, and they listen to you, and they will take it. Because nothing is more valuable than life. Everybody values life. Nobody wants to kill themselves. Suicide is the last resort. When the hopelessness ends, when they reach the end, that's the time they kill themselves. And another thing we have saying is only expert can prevent. So you don't need Dr. Upreti to prevent suicide. You are a family member. You take him to Dr. Upreti for treatment. But preventing suicide, the first cause is with the conversation and dialogue between you, between a close friend, between family. That's why the families have to be very concerned. Our friends have to be concerned. The office, you have to start watching and looking for each other. Just like it's a village. Everyone watches, because back in our family, if someone has a psychiatric problem, someone is looking, did you take your medicine this morning? Did you do this one? Did you do that one? Here, nobody asking that one, right? So we have to think suicide prevention, everyone's business. And everyone, if they are involved, they can do it. Let's go to the next slide. So, And the thing is, we think that people who commit themselves, they don't tell anyone. They keep it very close to the heart and they go hang themselves, they want to kill them. It's not true. Usually, he goes and tells everyone, I'm going to kill myself. But nobody listens to him. Only he doesn't say, I'm going to kill myself. He has his own way of do that. You know, people write letters, say bye to them. Maybe he calls his brother somewhere and say, hi, how are you doing? All those things. He says goodbye. And he tells them all the problem, but the problem is, we don't, just like when the birds sing, we don't talk to the birds because we don't understand their language, right? The same way when a person who is going to commit suicide, when he talks to you, we don't understand his language because he has his own language, and we don't understand it, and we just don't pay any attention. And after he kills himself, then somebody asks him, says, oh yeah, he did that. Yeah, he sent me something. He told me. Then people start thinking that one. And these are the things I teach in a long lecture how to do all these things. So, and another thing you say, the people who talk of suicide, they say, oh, you know, I'm going to kill. They want to do it. You know, I used to tell my friend, they would say, oh, I'm going to kill I used to say them, I'm going to jump from Tarara, I'm going to jump in the Rani Pokhari. You know, I joke with them, but in that process, what happens is, if somebody tells you, I'm going to kill myself, it's serious. Start taking notice and start thinking he has a problem. He's trying to tell you. He wants to discuss that problem. He wants you to be a partner to help him. So if you take it seriously, start talking to him, then he should slowly open up. Otherwise, he will say, oh, he doesn't even care. You still need to talk to him. When that happens, what? Then he says, the only way for me out is, let's leave this. And then again, we say that once a person decides to commit suicide, there's nothing anyone can do. Again, that is wrong, because the reason is, last resort is when he kill himself. Otherwise, he's going to try everything to save himself, because there's nothing more dear than one's life. So that's the last resort. So if you feel something like that one, talk to him, then take him to Dr. Upreti, because the thing is, once you can take him to him, that person is safe. The challenge is how to find out and take it to him. That's our challenge. That's where our parents come, friends come in, take him. Next one, please. Now, again, I think Dr. Upet is going to talk a lot about depression, so I'm not going to go into that one. But what it is 90% of the people who kill themselves have mental problems. And of that one, 3/4 have depression. Let's go to the other ones. I won't go to more. I'll leave it for Dr. Upreti to go to that one. Because it's in the outline right there. And usually people commit suicide when there's death in the family, divorce, job, when there's something happening. He may commit suicide. Did you see that Dr. Lasar in the jail? I won't be surprised if he hangs himself in the jail. Right? And the same thing, all the big politicians, once they do something, they say, oh, my board is down. What do I do? Some people can accommodate and handle, some people cannot handle the stress. And the people who cannot handle the stress, they are the ones who want to kill themselves. And in children, bullying is a big thing. Bullying in the high school is a big thing. A lot of children have gone and killed themselves. There is only so much they can check. When there is bullying by their own peer group, they don't know what to do. And they think, if something must be wrong with me, it's best, let me put an end to it. And the only way they see the end is killing themselves. So bullying is really very bad. And in every school nowadays, they teach you also how to do that one. And it's very important for the parents to talk to your kids. Bullying, if someone comes to school with turned clothes or with bad face, sad face, it's good to talk with the child saying, hey, what happened? What happened at school? It's good to be involved because you don't want the child to feel that someone is bullying and he is not something. other one is, if you think somebody is different, might kill, don't put drugs, because otherwise, to kill yourself also, you cannot just kill yourself by yourself, right? You cannot kill yourself by hitting each other. You need to have, if you have a gun, it's easy to shoot. If you have a drug, it's easy to fall. So taking those things off his access is a big thing. And sometimes things go in change. If somebody commits suicide, one of your group commits suicide, then people just follow. So usually when there are suicide in the school, usually there are 2, 3, 4 suicide. That's why when something happens, there's a big counseling, grief counseling at the school. They talk to them, they teach them how to handle. So it's very important that also if one of a child's friend dies or something happens, you take your time and talk to him and walk him through the grief process. Because for him, you are order, but he's not. He doesn't have all those expertise how to handle that one. So we need to help him that one. Next one. And historical fact, people who commit suicide once are more apt to commit suicide again. So if somebody has committed suicide once, watch him out. If he's in big trouble, he's the one who tried it, he will try again and again. And then in family suicide. And then, in Nepal they say before you get married, check their family history, everything. Sometimes I think this is really true. The reason is in families, if you have history of family history of suicide, the same member is much more apt in suicide. It runs in family. Like I used to work in a psychiatric center for 10 years. I have 12 patients. I have 3 generations in the same hospital. And I have 5 brothers in the same hospital. So it runs in the family. There's a genetic predisposition also. Let's go to the next one. The other one is, what are the warning suicide? How do you know this person can commit suicide? Is verbal clues. He starts talking about suicide. Maybe I should go and kill myself. Maybe I should do this one. Once someone starts talking like that one, it's time to leave. Careful. They say this again. He said, they talk to friends and say, no, I have decided to kill myself. If somebody says that one, that's a warning sign. And then he might say sometimes, this world is bad. Nobody wants me. I wish I was there. Everybody will be very happy. If you hear people talk like that one, even old people do that one. I have seen 80, 90-year-olds saying, nobody wants me. I'm just a burden to them. I wish I was there. That's why suicide rate is very high in the young elderly. And then they say that, no, I have so much problem, I'm tired of it. I want to end it all. And then they will say, no, if I cannot marry that girl, I'll kill myself. Right? Not that people say that one. In Nepal it's very popular in people, but people say that one. Even people say, if I've done good school medicine, if I've done pass in the second list, I'll kill myself. They may do that. This is the time you watch them. This is the time when you get started. Next one. Then the same thing, that's a direct one, they will come and tell you. That the other indirect one, he will say, I'm so tired in life. I'm so tired, I've done everything, I'm so tired. It's best not to go on. I have heard people say sometimes will come from here, they try, they don't have jobs and employment, they work so many hours and say, I think I'm tired of my life. I don't know why I came to this country. And this is the person to watch out. And the same thing, I'm so much bothered, so much a burden to my family. It's better for me, for everyone, if I'm gone. And they will say this thing, if you start thinking that if you know of someone in your family, some friend who will commit suicide, you start thinking, these people must have been saying one of these things to someone. Everyone does that. Only we don't take it that much seriously. We say, oh, he's the old guy, he always says he'll kill himself. We do that one. But they mean it. And they think, I'm old, nobody cares, who am I? Nobody cares for me anyway, so I'm better off, I'm dead. It's time for me to go, goodbye. They verbalize these things. And they say, or sometimes they say, no, I'm in so much debt, I'm so much debt, I have so much trouble. Best thing to out is let's get out. Right? A lot of business people in India, the farmers, a lot of loans, they're hanging still because they have so much loan. They say that's the best thing for me and my family that I hang myself, my family won't have it. And the same thing is, you know, I have so much to roll with them. Oh, it's all right, but you don't have a lot of time to worry about me. Just hang in some time. After some time, you don't have to worry about me. These are common things to tell you. The only thing is, sometimes you can take it seriously, you think they are joking, but half the time these are the signals these people send. Next one. And these are the ones they talk to you. Behavior-wise, they have done suicide attempt a lot of time in the past. But they start buying guns. All of a sudden he starts to go and buy a gun. Or he starts collecting pills. That means he's thinking of killing himself. Now he's trying to do something. And if you have again, this is the depression, all those combination, it comes to more, and that one again I'll leave depression on that one. Then all of a sudden, people will say, all of a sudden, no, I want to write my will. I want to say goodbye to this one. I want to give a gift. He wanted this very badly, so I want to give this most precious thing to me, to my brother. He wants to start getting things in order. That means he has decided now to kill himself. And that's the time to watch out also. And the same way, usually it's very common. Something very prized possession, you give it to your sisters, you give it to your brothers, if they wanted it, you will call them and say, you know, by the way, I'm sending this to you. I've seen a lot of people do that in some of my friends' circles who come to suicide. When I ask them, did he do that? They say, oh yeah, he sent this to stuff. But it was too late. And the same thing, he will call and you say goodbye. You won't say, I'll kill myself, say goodbye, but you'll talk, say how I was doing, bye-bye. All of a sudden he talks to his friend for some time, and that's way of saying goodbye, I'm going to And usually you find that these people suddenly start getting very much religious. All of a sudden someone who never goes to temple, start going religious. We have a friend in Maryland, you know, who told me I was concerned. I told his friend, bring that friend to me so I can talk to him and take him to the doctor. But he goes to meditation, all those things, he goes to the park, he meditates all night. I'm still worried about him. Because if someone shows a certain interest in religion, it's most probably something wrong is going to happen. Then if someone is very unexplained religion, anger, aggressiveness, that's the time also to think this man is going to commit suicide. Next one. Again, going the same one, if you are fired or expelled from his school, it's such a loss of faith. Not everyone can take it. If somebody expels you from class, not everybody can take it. They say, well, how can I show my faith to my parents? They spend so much time on me, now I'm expelled from my school. The best thing is just kill myself. Even people cannot handle that one. Same thing, especially families, when you move. Moving is difficult, but younger one moving is totally uprooted from their peer group, from school, it's totally new environment. And usually people cannot handle that much stress. And a lot of suicide happens from that also. That time. And loss of major relationship, you know, tragic love affair, right? A lot of people in Hindi movies, you have all this thing, all the people killing each other, and it really happens. So really, some people cannot just deal with it. And the same way someone, you know, death of his spouse, a very son, child, I've seen that a lot of time couple, you know, one couple dies in a week, other one, I start thinking must not be coincidence, must be someone killing them. The second one, killing must have killed. Because some people just cannot handle And then again, diagnosed with terminal illness, somebody had cancer, they say, who has cancer, I die anyway 3 months. Why take all the problem? Why don't I die right now? It is saving the agony, it is saving all the expenses of the problem family. So that's the time to start thinking also. Financial security is, you know, the stock market tumbled what? Almost 2,000 points last 2 weeks. If someone lost a fortune, if someone had borrowed a lot of money and lost that one, they cannot handle. So in a financial time like that also, you see a lot of suicides in recession, in collapse of the financial impact, this stock market went down by what, almost 2,500 points. And in psychiatry, this is the one. Once you have in hospital, sometimes you establish a burn with the therapist. If that becomes a very dear one, you depend on that therapist, that person helps you to chart your way, you are getting better, and so they want the patient discharged, they change the therapy, sometimes they can't handle that one. They can say that, oh, this is the time for me, nobody cares about me, the person care about me also gone, this is the time for me. So in the hospital, there's a gradual shift of that one, they take time how to do that also. Again, coming back to fear of giving burden to others, we already went to that one. Next one, I think that maybe. So like I said, I try to rush as quickly as possible in the time. Usually I take 1 hour and I give 6 hours lessons. So I try to do it only to make sure that I'm trying to sensitize you to these things, so that if you are interested, you can come back, take out time, go into much more detail, answer questions like that one. But I hope I've succeeded in getting you interested. And I always say that, I drove almost 2 hours here, 2 hours back. Then I say that if I only lose interest in you, and you only implement one intervention, it will work. Thank you very much.